First book that impressed you?
Oh, you mean as a child?
Yeah, yeah.
I can remember Call of the Wild. That was a book that.
Jack London's
Yeah,
Call of the Wild.
I really loved that as a child. I remember reading that when I was in the 4th grade. That was one that stayed with me. As I got older, I think the book that really probably had the biggest influence on me, and probably as a writer still, was when I was about 15. I read Crime and Punishment.
Oh, wow.
And I was too young to really get all of that. But that scene where the pawnbroker's killed I had a reaction to that scene that I never had before with a book. That a book could affect me that powerfully.
And Crime and Punishment.
Yeah, and that book really, I think Dostoevsky is a writer I still go back to. He's a writer that's important to me.
I remember Brothers Karamazov, and the thing about the brother who died and they kept his body too long.
Yeah.
Do you remember that scene? And everybody was embarrassed because he began to smell bad, and he had been a deeply religious person, and the connotation was, he's embarrassing us, he shouldn't do that, he shouldn't smell bad.
Now, Dostoevsky's an amazing writer.
Yeah.
And he has those scenes, he has that ability to give you a scene like that you just cannot forget.
Is it true, am I right, that he was once stood up in front of a firing squad and it was a fake?
Yeah.
He thought they were going to shoot him,
yeah.
and he's standing there waiting, and then what did they do? They fired dummy bullets or something.
Oh, they'd actually lined them up, and then for whatever reason they didn't go through with it, and but that, as you might imagine, focused his mind pretty well in a certain way for the rest of his life.
Oh. Yeah, I think I read he had epileptic fits after that because of that experience. Let's get into your books in particular. I'm assuming that this is an issue with you, that a lot of Appalachian writers have themes in their book that have to do with people getting separated from their natural world or their home. I used to have a course I taught called The Journey Home or The Return Home, because it's an awesome number of books about somebody trying to get home or trapped somewhere and can't return, or some variation of that. You know, the guy over in Kentucky, young guy.
Silas House.
Yeah.
Silas, yeah.
His first book, that Clay's Quilt, was unique to me because it was about a guy trying to return to his culture, and he was right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
You know, that he was alienated from it and could not. And then things like Lemon in His Bosom, where they are trapped and can't go home. And the doll maker, the same thing, they're trapped and can't go home. You see that in your own work?
I do. I think particularly even in the first novel, I've seen it in my poetry, certainly, even in Eureka Mill.
Yes.
That sense of, which I've seen in my own family. I think one thing about Appalachian people, and of all groups, we have to be careful about generalizations.
Yeah.
But one thing I have seen, I think it's true of a lot of mountain cultures, not only in the United States, but all over the world, is that there's this intense identification with the place. And because of that, when people leave it, there's a sense of never being able to be comfortable outside of it, so that in a sense that's always a focus. And I think the other thing that works with that is being in it and seeing it change, seeing the transformation of the region, and in a sense having something else I deal with a good bit in my work of what happens when a person has been in this very traditional culture and sees the culture disappear in the particular place. One Foot in Eden certainly was about that, particularly with the lake coming in. To me, that, in a sense, was, a way of showing that actually happening.
Yeah, what you said made me think immediately of one of your short stories about the guy who has a son who is addicted to drugs, and he just gets worse and worse and worse, and the only thing he sees to do is to take his son and get out of the environment they're in. What do you remember the story?
Yeah.
Takes place in Boone.
Yeah,
yeah.
right, yeah.
Boone, North Carolina.
Yeah, yeah, that story certainly, that's where, what's happening there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Deep Gap, it's called Deep Gap.
That's a very powerful story to me, and of course, I lived over there a good while, around Boone. Tell me this, in Eureka Mill, this first collection of poems that you did Eureka Mill ever experience any of the strikes or the violence or the labor disputes that, like it was going on at Lorraine Mills down in Gastonia?
It wasn't as violent, but there were actually flying squadrons. The strikers came into town, and it was just this really, there's that great Edith Wharton quote about the hard considerations of the poor. You had these poor mill workers who, the guy who owned the mill said, you can join the strikers, but if you do, I'm shutting down this mill. And he said, I've got enough money to where, I can live comfortably the rest of my life. And so you've got a choice to make here. And, there were some that sympathized with the strikers, but actually they ended up not letting the strikers in. So you had these, this is, one of those kind of terrible moments where you see,
Right.
the people that are trying to help, and just the complexity of the situation. What do you do in this situation? You've got a family. And,
Yes.
so you had that. So it didn't get as violent, but certainly the potential was there. But also you had that really tough decision, which, several people in my own family made, of, whose side will I be on, or will I join the strikers or will I not?